And of course, my thanks to Jack Murphy, Colin Dowdall, Deborah Loughran, and Nat King Cole. They've all done their bit there for us this morning. It's good to have you with me. Rowan Hand, I'm your host. Pleasure to be your host, a privilege to be your host on the 3 hours each day, each weekday out of Newry on Destination Newry. Louis Boyle, man of Newry, you're welcome. How are you?
Good morning, thank you.
You're a Castle Street man.
Castle Street man, yes, indeed,
Yeah.
in those days.
I always remember Louis' kith and kin, his family there.
Indeed.
Remember your father, and I often talk
indeed.
about him as the last of the great, or
Yes,
one of the
indeed.
last of the great gentleman taxi drivers, hackney drivers of Newry.
Yes,
He took a
indeed.
pride in what he did.
Like,
And
I mean, Castle Street was when you're looking back on it, a very close-knit community. We had, a large number of families there, and a lot of families with large numbers of children. I mean, we had 9, and that was kind of the average in those days. And and on our house, if you looked left, you went up to the Sacred Heart School, where the girls went to, and you looked right down to the Abbey.
And you went to the Abbey.
We
You were
played
an Abbey
together, we
man.
schooled together, we were right beside the Newry Cathedral. We all were together, and it was.
So your memories of the Abbey, they were good?
Yes, on the whole, very much so. I think I have to say, as you know, there's been a lot of, over the years, bad publicity directed at Christian Brothers, and certainly I think there were a number of people who were, I think, unsuited to
Misplaced.
and really misplaced. But I have to, and I know there was a lot of physical punishment handed out in those days, but that was the norm in a way. No one kind of really, and I think some of it was very much over the top. But I have to say that on the whole, in my experience, most of the Christian Brothers were men of integrity and committed to education and trying to do the best for us.
Have to say that would have been my experience as well. And there's one I remember particularly. A man called McFarlane, Pierce McFarlane.
Yes, Pierce McFarlane.
Teacher of English.
Teacher of English. He was very erudite, and he was also the sports teacher. And
he was a great fellow.
Yes, indeed.
I
remember writing an English essay for him, and he telling me that, Louis, he says, that was excellent.
Yeah.
You know.
And that coming from Pierce McFarlane was a mighty statement.
Yes, indeed.
It was a mighty statement.
But those were the days of Castle
And you were a
Street.
great athlete at school, Louis, I recall.
Yes, indeed.
You were a runner.
My sports were sprint. We call it 100 yards in those days, 220 yards, and high jump and long jump.
Yeah.
And both at the primary school, the Abbey Primary, and in the secondary, and I carried that on. And I had the distinction, I'm proud of it now, to have won the Victor Ludorum Cup 3 years in a row.
Wow.
Who
was Victor Ludorum?
Well, Victor Ludorum was the winner of the games. It's the Latin.
Oh.
The cup was Victor Ludorum.
Oh, yeah. He's lauded for being the victor.
From the Roman days.
I thought you were giving me a Christian name and a surname there.
No, it meant that I was the best overall, the best performer overall.
For goodness sake.
I remember, you remember Jerry Brown, of course.
Oh, bless
and
him.
Jerry took a particular interest in me because I was interested. I played Gaelic football as well as athletics. And I remember when I was leaving school, and he said to me that, go and join the athletics club at Queen's University.
Yes.
He said, you're not Olympic material or anything like that, but you're good, and you'll enjoy it, and you'll keep you fit, you'll make friends, etc. But unfortunately, I didn't do that. I started drinking beer, and in fact,
you also were the first Roman Catholic to become a member of the Unionist Party.
Well,
what propelled you in that direction?
I thought
we're coming to that now.
To talk about Compostela.
It was an honourable thing to have done, but you're now looking at other politics,
another
the SDLP,
I'm not in the
things
SDLP,
like that,
obviously.
But a lot of people took a lot of pride in seeing that you had the guts to get up and do something according to your conscience that was different.
That's correct.
And
and it's something I could talk about.
We'll do this at another time.
On another occasion.
Absolutely.
But as I say,
absolutely.
I don't look back on it with a great sense of pride. I think I think it basically was naive.
Well, others do, I have to tell you.
You
were inspirational for other people.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
Because there is a class of human being who doesn't want to march to the drumbeat of the common herd.
Well,
gone beyond that.
Yes, I suppose I was trying to lift myself and think for myself, not just think
in the wider sphere.
Yeah.
That's
but
what
I have
you were
to
doing.
say, by and large, that among family and friends and people in Newry generally, most people kind of just said, "Fine, get on with it." And maybe you're a bit of a fool or naive, but any hostility or enmity or anything came on the Unionist side. Always saw me as, there was always a suspicion, you know.
I had the same
I was even called the Trojan horse.
Yeah, you know, the Trojan horse. Yeah. I had the same experience in the Alliance Party, because I was one of the founding fathers of the Alliance Party in Newry.
Yes.
I was here as the first press officer. But any abuse that I got, any distrust that I got, would have come from the other side, not from the Catholic side within it. And that was an interesting, thing at that time. Now let's go to the Camino, northwest of Spain. This man has been on the Camino. He has the passport to prove it, and we have been doing Camino things on the program all this last week, because the Southern Area Hospice are going to do the Camino, or part of it, to raise funds for that magnificent work that's done in the House of Caring on the hill that is the Southern Area Hospice. And you more than most, because you're preparing to go back again.
Yes, I'm preparing to go back. The walk that I did, Rowan, last year was the Camino Francés, which goes across the whole of northern Spain from the French-Spanish border at the Pyrenees, Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, to right through to Santiago de Compostela. That's 800 kilometers, 500 miles. It takes, for any average person, about 35 days.
Many miles is that a day? About 26, 20, 30?
No, well, 30 kilometers, 25 to 30 kilometers, which is about maybe 16 to 18 miles a day.
But isn't it interesting that you're able to, on an ongoing basis for 25 days, to do 18 miles, 18 miles, 18 miles, 30 days, 18 miles, 18.
Days, you
know, for goodness sake, that requires a great fitness.
Well, I do a fair bit of walking. I've walked in the Pyrenees, and I've walked in the Alps actually recently this year, and that's much, much tougher. But what was different about this is that it's every day. You're walking every single day.
There's no recovery time.
And you get into a, well, no, there is actually. The kind of pattern was, you started early in the morning. Usually people were up at 6 o'clock, at half past 6 in the albergues, and they were rustling around. So eventually you just joined the pack, because you had to be out by 8 o'clock. You were on the road, and you walked for generally 5-6 hours. Would be about average, 5-6 hours. So you stopped for a number of breaks. I didn't take any breakfast normally, because I wasn't breakfast in a lot of these places. Stop for a coffee or a sandwich, whatever. And you arrive at your destination for the next day, for that day's route, about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and before the really hottest part of the day.
Yes.
And you then find an albergue to stay in, and then first thing you do is have a hot shower, change of clothes, do your washing, because you have to. I had 3 sets of everything, and you have to keep on changing. Get your kit on your bunk bed. And that gives you, you've got the right to that then. And then go and have a vino rosado or a beer and relax for the rest of the day. And I would have sat and wrote my diary and maybe read up about the next day's walk, and invariably met people, because I think the most unique thing about this walk was that as someone said to me, you meet the world.
You meet the
I
world,
met people
indeed.
from every country in the world. And everybody had their own reason for doing it and their own story, and they were very, very open to talk to you, and it was.
And it seems to me that to meet the world is fine on the Camino and the world outside, but if you're meeting the world at the sweaty end of a busy day in an auberge, you can experience the trauma of bodily noises and smells
all
and
of
the
those
rest
things.
of it.
One of my main concerns when I was going, because like most people, if I go on holidays, I try to book into a hotel or something half decent, as it were. But this was going to be in communal living, and going to do it without your normal comforts. So into a dormitory with 20, 30 people.
It's difficult.
Everybody, male, female together. It's difficult, but I didn't find it difficult. I was surprised how easy I adapted to it.
So the expectation of it being difficult swiftly breaks down into a joyous acceptance. Really?
Exactly.
So maybe we are destined to be that kind of herd animal, are we?
You've had a hard day's walking. You've had great conversations. You've had great, and you have a hot shower, a change of clothes, get your sandals on, the boots off, and have all the sticky things going, and it's very relaxing, and I think that you also get a get the pilgrim's menu Peregrino
Wow.
in the evening. That's usually eight or €9, and it's a very for three-course meal with water and wine and bread included.
Yeah.
You have that, and usually you have to be in by about 10 o'clock and kit down.
Which you would want to be anyway. With the,
well, of course you
the
would.
cares of tomorrow beckoning.
Snoring certainly was a problem in some of these.
Yes.
But you just got used to it. I think some people had more.
I remember crossing in India in Tamil Nadu from west to east, from east to west, on the night train to Coimbatore. And I said, how am I going to do this? You know, it was the sleeping accommodation. You had bunks, bum. So I took my own pillow with me, and I took my own blanket, and I made a tent.
Yes.
My God, by the time I got to Coimbatore, I didn't want to waken up and get off the train. I was that comfortable.
Yes, well, I had a small pillow with me, and a lightweight sleeping bag. In fact, I didn't have to use the sleeping bag for the first two and a half weeks. I had a sleeping bag liner, a little silk bag, and that's all I did. Sometimes you get a blanket provided and sheets, fresh sheets, because they have to practically fumigate the place after each day because of the bed bugs. There's a whole problem about that. But as I say, some people had more difficulty than others. But I must say, I was surprised how easily I adapted.
Why did you do it? There must be a very solid and easily defined reason. It's not just because it was there. There are reasons people do it.
Well, I'm not sure that there was one particular reason, but I suppose primarily it was my retirement project. I retired from work early at the age of 57, unintentionally, and that's a whole story. But I became 60. It took me 7 years from when I retired from work till I actually became 65 that I had planned to do this. This is because I had read about it, I'd heard about it, and I liked walking. I've done walking. And it just took me that time. So for me, primarily, it was a challenge. I just wanted to be able to say I did it.
But as a walker, was it really a challenge? Surely from the day one, you knew that as a walker, it would be no problem to you. You would be able to do it.
Well, having said that, Rowan, a lot of people had blisters and difficulties like that, you know, and knee problems. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have that. No, I didn't think the walking would be that. I mean, people say 800 kilometres, but in fact, when you look at the route and you look at that on that book and you see the extent of it, that's a whole of. I mean, Spain's a big country, you know.
Yes.
And you say, how am I ever going to do that? But in fact, you do it in manageable bits.
Yeah,
and
every
day you get a little bit further on, and some of these signposts will tell you you've walked for so many kilometres, and you've so many more to go. But
Sean, we'll have a look at this, please, if we may, just as we go and we keep going. So bite-sized chunks, you were able to do it.
Each day you did that.
And there's the expectation.
It all mounts up. But you say you don't get, the fact that you're able to get a good rest every day. I mean, you finished about early afternoon, you got your shower, you got your place to stay, went out and had a beer, relaxed, talk to people, and then you had a meal in the evening, and that recharged the batteries for the next day. You know,
you're ready to go.
So, but I could say the other thing is,
Sean.
And this is something that a lot of people, and obviously, if there are, it might not apply to the people going on supporting the hospice, because if you're doing the whole Camino, you have to take everything with you, and that's unless there's some people obviously do it and get their luggage moved. So it's very important to keep your backpack as light as possible. Recommended 10 kilo, because you have to carry water. Water is very important, and a certain amount of food. And even with my relatively light, I found it very painful on the shoulders. At the first week, a lot of people were really, you know. So that's one of the big difficulties.
Is it possible to say who was the most interesting person you met on your journey?
I met so many people. I met a lady who had from Scotland, who had a mental health breakdown in her mid-40s and had gone to a doctor who had put her on antidepressants, which had a violent reaction to her. She then went to a counsellor. He suggested doing some big challenge, and she decided to do this, and her friends all saved up money for her. But very sadly, she was robbed of her purse at Manchester Airport when she was flying out and she lost all her cards and €500. But she still decided to go ahead. And I met her, and she was a very fragile person. And I thought that was tremendous. That I would have turned around and said, "I'm not going if I've lost." But she got it all sorted out when she got over there.
It's very much in the spirit of the
Camino.
Camino.
And another sad case was I met a priest who had to leave, and I had known him in fact through Corrymeela, came from the Diocese of Derry, and he had to leave the priesthood because he had a relationship with a woman.
Yeah.
And eventually he left, he was laicized and went and lived, and they got married and lived in Dublin for 10 years. And then she had a very aggressive cancer and she died. And a year afterwards he was walking the Camino. And we recognized each other. And he was
from Corrymeela days.
Well, from Corrymeela, but in fact he spent a little bit of time up there. But he was a very, very dedicated priest. And he actually was a trained psychotherapist, and he was the ideal person to be in the priesthood, and yet he had to leave.
Yeah.
But
all for the love of a lady, God help us.
And just then he started the Camino, and on the very first day, an old rugby injury on his knee played up, and he was he's going to have to take public transport. So that was a sad case. There's so many people. I met a lovely story was I met a priest called Father Larry O'Keefe from Kilkenny, County Kilkenny. Now for the first week, neither I nor anybody else knew that he was a priest. He was a parish priest.
Yes.
And there were quite a few Irish people in the kind of general company I was walking in, and he said that he wanted to keep that. He wanted to be treated as one of the lads. He didn't, because he said once to an Irish person you mention you're a priest, it suddenly creates issues, barriers and so forth. And so for about a week he was just, and eventually I asked him, what is your profession? And he told me, and he told me the reason why he was being, but he was great.
But isn't it interesting that maybe it's me being judgmental again, I mustn't be, I keep castigating myself over that, but isn't it interesting that a priest, a parish priest at that, has the spirituality to go and do the walk of the Camino, that he does. He thinks outside the normal box, and he goes and does it, and that's a huge thing.
Well, I'm not sure that he did it for the spirituality of it, because I mean we all enjoyed so many other aspects of it. I mean the culture, the history, the people.
But isn't that? Don't you think that that's all part of a wider sense spirituality? If you've got that camaraderie, if you've got companionship, if you've got the experience of culture and God's natural world, that it is part of a package that loosely can be put on a shelf of spirituality.
Well, as I was reading the books in preparation for this, and also during it, I was aware, and I try to keep reminding myself, that pilgrims from all over Europe have been doing this pilgrimage for 1,000 years.
Yes.
And in those days they were very, very poor, very, very badly treated. They were robbed, they were killed, and they had to band together to
prime targets, weren't they?
Prime targets, and they had, some of them would have been practically on bare feet, I suppose, and there was very little accommodation and there was very little hygiene. So people have done, and I mean, relatively speaking today, it's a comfortable. And of course you can make it even more comfortable by staying in hotels if you want to.
Did you get the sense? Did you get the sense that you were in the footsteps of those who had gone before?
That's what I'm trying to say. I just say that's that this. I mean, for example, in one particular place there's an old Roman road, which is just the original Roman, 2,000 years old, and it's been there, and it hasn't. I mean, there's been a few changes at the edges, but we walked that for maybe a mile or two, and it's pointed out in the kind of guidebook. This is the best example of a preserved Roman road. And funny, just next to it, you can see a modern motorway. And what a contrast! And I said to myself, "Will this be here in another 1,000 years?
Of course,
and will that be there?" But I could mention, Rowan, probably in terms of this, you had mentioned about spiritual occasions, but I mention the cathedral in a minute in St. Santiago, because that is a very emotional time. Just showed you that photograph there of
this one of you,
yes, in Burgos. It was a photograph
that
of
one.
Now this was a
Sean. Have a look at this, please. Tell me about this one.
Yes. it was a Sunday morning, and Burgos is. Can I say that Burgos is a very beautiful city? I mean, and one of the things I realised that this part of Spain, northern Spain, it's much more. It's much nicer. I really prefer it to the. Most people go to the Costas in the south.
Yeah.
But this is real. This is, and. As I said, in Burgos, like most cities, you've got the old and the new, and they prove very, very good at preserving the old part of the city.
Yes.
And also the new suburbs, of course, are there
Thank
too.
you, Sean.
And
yes.
when you're walking into Burgos, you're walking through the modern suburbs, and then you come into the old city. Now, the cathedral is an absolute World Heritage Site. It's one of the biggest cathedrals in Spain. And you take you a half a day going around it, and it's absolutely beautiful in terms of all the little altars that are there, and the artwork and the treasures and the statues and so forth. But just on that particular picture, I went Sunday morning at about 20 minutes to 12. I walked up to the viewpoint. That's over the city, and you can see the viewpoint, and it's just overlooking the cathedral.
Absolutely.
And at about 20 minutes to 12, the bells of the cathedral started ringing for 12 o'clock mass. And it was like the joy bells I remember. I remember them in Uri, but this was even more so. There must have been about 10 bells ringing, and they just and they rang and they rang and they rang, and I just sat there at that point for about 15-20 minutes, almost in ecstasy. And I said to myself, those bells have been made by man. They've been operated by man, but they're ringing out praise to God.
Huge thing.
Those bells, that's the whole reason why those bells have been rung. And I just thought it was a very moving, spiritual experience.
Of course.
And that's why. Lucky enough, there was somebody there who asked me to take a photograph. I said, "We take it because I want to remember."
Yeah, but the thing strikes me about there, you're not part of any band. You're not part of any group. The aloneness of you on the pilgrimages there. I know you met all kinds of people, but fundamentally, you walk alone.
Well, it's a mixture of both, Rowan, because I met that person, Larry O'Keefe, I mentioned, Father Larry. I walked with him for about 2 weeks, and at Burgos he had to go back, and he was killing himself. He hadn't the time. I should say, by the way, if anybody wants to do, you need 3 things. You need time. You need money, but not a huge amount of money. It's not an expensive if you do it the way I did it. And also you need fitness. But no, you can have your. I liked company, particularly at night when we're having a bite. Usually you sat down and you just introduced yourself. Because you're in, and you found that English was the kind of most people wanted to speak in English.
The language of the Camino.
The language of, although a lot of people, some people would resent that, but it certainly.
It was your experience.
Yeah, my experience, and people liked. If there were obviously Dutch people would be talking in Dutch and German, but if in terms of English, it could be.
Well, our Newry people will be going. I think it's September next year, but
next year.
I'm not sure, but the hospice folk maybe let us know that. But they're recruiting at the moment, you see, and they're doing it for the very wonderful work that occurs at the hospice.
Totally, and everybody is
absolutely.
Cancer is such a huge problem in our community, and very, very few families have not been touched by it. And in fact, in my case, my father, my mother, my 2 brothers died of cancer. So I'm very aware of, and I'm very aware of the importance of palliative care.
That's great up there.
And it's just
Osmond Morris, the palliative specialist, he's fantastic there.
So
that's been done by them for the hospice, but you were looking beyond Ireland. You were looking beyond the horizon to support your charity in Africa. What's the story?
There was two charities. I mentioned Corrymeela, which most people, which I've been involved with for quite, and so part of the money I raised was for that. But I'm involved with the Rotary movement.
Of course,
I'm now currently just starting being president of Banbridge Rotary Club. Rotary is a worldwide movement, but the Rotary clubs in Ireland are supporting a project in the Kenyan Rift Valley, just below Mount Kenya, and it's called the Rumbo region. And this lady from Ireland called Elaine Bannon went out to visit there and maybe do a little bit of work. It maybe 10 years ago. And she was so enthused and so concerned about what she saw that she decided to devote the rest of her life living out there and trying to help the local tribes and that local community. And since then, Rotary International have been supporting the project, and it's been very developmental. It's about health, health education, school, and working at trying to improve water supplies. So they know the things you know from your experience in Africa.
Of course,
those are the things that are water, clean water, hygiene, sanitation, health, and education are the big things. So I managed to raise a few £1,000s to support her project. And the nice thing about Rotary is, and I mean Rotary is a really fantastic worldwide organisation. Everything in Rotary is given is voluntary. There's no perks for anybody.
Of course.
And when I raised the money, that money went directly to the project. And I got an email from her acknowledging to say, you know what I mean, there was no middleman, there was no administration.
That's as good
everybody
as it
does it voluntarily. And I mean, yours is exactly
the same. But that's the wonderful thing, you know. So we have Father Donald with us at the moment, back from Africa, and he literally takes the money back out with him.
Well, that's the beauty. That is the beauty.
And then the whole community grows. Your family are the bricklayers. Sean's family, they're the carpenters. Somebody else, you're the well diggers. And it's African people. They're working on their own behalf and developing their community together. So all of that is good. You're heading back out again in the Camino.
Yes, I mean, some people say
there's no end to
that's
it.
like it's almost a bug. It's almost a kind of like I'm not saying an addiction, but as I think I said to you earlier on, the thing I felt most of all when I was on this walk was what a privilege at 65 years of age, as I was last year, to have the time, the health, enough money to get me by, and the fitness to be there. And I just thought this was just so wonderful. So I have never been to Portugal. The Portuguese Camino, it starts at Lisbon. It goes right through, hugging the coast to some extent, right up to Porto, and then from Porto to a little border town of Chuy, and then on to Santiago.
You come close.
It's about. Oh yes.
You come close to Fatima.
Fatima, that's right. And unfortunately, I don't have enough time. I have to be back in the middle of September. I would like to have taken in Fatima, but in fact, from Lisbon for the first 4 or 5 days, I'd be walking on the Fatima Camino and the Santiago Camino go side by side. So I'm sure I'll be talking to people who are, because people do that. People actually, when they're going to Fatima, they walk to Fatima as part of a pilgrimage, you know. So as I say, just then it diverts after about 5 or 6 days. But unfortunately, I won't have the time. But some of the in the Portuguese, it's not as well developed as the Camino, the main one, the Camino Frances. But it's coming better all of the time. And I mean, I'm sure I'm going on my own. I'm sure I'll meet lots of interesting people. But even if not, I still have lots of things. I've got my Kindle with me, and you know, and my tablet, and I'll be able to keep in touch.
And
what I usually do, I'll read a diary. And what I did at the last time was everywhere you went there was internet access. You know, there was Wi-Fi, and I would have sent a little blog back about the experiences, just to get it. Actually, for my own benefit, to try and record it, because it was just. I would have to safely say, when I did the walk last year, it was one of the most memorable and most enjoyable experiences of my life, and that's a big
it's a big say.
Yeah,
it is. So what about the people who are going from hospice? What advice would you give them from your experience already? Certainly, one is keep the weight down, keep the carrying.
Are the people doing the whole walk?
No, they're doing about 100 kilometers.
Yeah, see, a lot of people start from Sarria, which is probably where they will, because Sarria is.
Sarria. There we have it there.
Can you see it?
Oh, I do. I see it there. Sarria. And then you have got Port Maran, Pat Maran, and then Palace de Rey.
Palace de Rey, that's it.
And then Arzua, and then into Santiago.
That's right. That's about 6 days walking. Some people might want to walk on to Finisterre if they're there, but so I think that they will. Any person of any kind of level of fitness will can do that section of the walk, you know,
yes.
and it's maybe when they do it and they get their appetite whetted, then maybe they'll want to
come back and do the whole thing.
Maybe just to say something about coming into the cathedral, into Santiago de Compostela.
That's the mind-blowing thing.
That's the thing. You know, you're walking. There's actually an elevation, and you can see the cathedral. It's the first thing you see away in the distance, you know. And it's a very, you know, after all these weeks and weeks of walking in deprivation, here is the destination eventually, and you come into the city, and again it's the new part, and come into the old part, and it's wonderful. I think the way Spain have been able to do that, you know, preserving the old and the blend.
It's totally, because if you said to me, Santiago de Compostela now, my image is of old castellation, cathedral,
well, it is. Well, I mean,
cobblestones.
Of course, the old part of it, yes.
Yeah, but I don't think of modernity at all.
There's a big maternity, so there's a big suburb. But you walk through, and eventually you come to there's a kind of like an archway, and very often, most of the time, there's a piper playing there. Now he's not there officially; he's there to raise money, I suppose.
Of course, and good luck to him.
It's very emotional. And as soon as you walk through that archway, officially you're no longer a pilgrim.
Wow,
you've arrived.
Wow.
The cathedral itself is fine, you know, Romanesque, as I understand a cathedral in terms of architectural terms, but it's not as big or as good as say Burgos or Seville, but it's a very beautiful cathedral. Yeah. But every day at 12 o'clock they have the Pilgrim's Mass. And as you know, everybody thinks of the incense burner, the
Bota Perfumo.
Bota Primero.
Wow.
And you have 8 of the 8 guys, there's a Spanish name for them, robed. Now, they don't always use is it after the Mass? You know, you don't often, you don't always do it. It's only if the church is full. But when I was there, it was practically every day. I was 2 days. I saw it for 2, and they start this, and there's music and playing in the background. And that's a very emotional. And this thing, they pull this thing down, and it starts swinging. And it's fantastic, and I mean that is you know, people will the hospice people will really enjoy that. And
you're encouraging
you have usually the masses are concelebrated.
Oh yes,
you have visiting priests from all over the world, you know, and officially, I mean, they have to regulate the church because it's absolutely full. So you have a mixture of tourists and pilgrims, and you can recognise the pilgrims with their rucksacks and their and so forth, and you're not allowed to take photographs, but like most other things in Spain, everybody ignores it, including the priest on the altar.
They're taking photographs of everybody. So the thing about the folk who are going from here, you've been very encouraging to them. They should go with a full and determined heart. Go for it.
Thoroughly enjoy it. You'll thoroughly enjoy it.
Can you tell the people how they can help your charity, please? How can they make contact with to give you some assistance if they want to send you a donation?
Yeah, well, I mean, it can be through the Banbridge Rotary Club.
Banbridge Rotary Club. Is there a website?
We have, but it's just we're going to get it updated. Unfortunately, it has fallen, but it's on the website.
Banbridge Rotary Club.
Banbridge Rotary Club, but there's also the Rotary Club in Ireland. Rotary District Ireland 1160, and there's a very big website there. And if you would click on international or project, you will find the Rumbo Project.
The Rumbo Project.
Rumbo Project. And as I say, the beauty about there's an Elaine Bannon who's situated there, and that's and she's an Irish person, and any money you raise will go straight to that.
So that's the Rumbo Project. Contact them through Rotary Ireland or the Banbridge Rotary Club and be of assistance and make a difference in the lives of the Kenyan people.
Yes.
Go well.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming in. Louis Boyle, ladies and gentlemen. Sean, we'll have some music.